Thank you for taking a moment to review the implementation recommendations of the Iowa Rest Area Management Plan, or IRAMP for short. This is the second release of this implementation plan, and we welcome your thoughts and comments. Before we review the recommendations and the future rest area system, we'd like to first take a moment to review the rest area system as it is today, which includes 38 full-service rest areas and 16 parking-only sites. This map is a depiction of their location throughout the state, the locations of the wait stations within the state, which are sometimes used for truck parking, as well as rest areas located on the interstate in immediately adjacent states. We've been at this study for quite some time. Beginning in 2012, we completed a data collection effort to identify the condition and usage of all the rest areas located throughout the state, as well as alternative service locations like truck stops and convenience stores located near the interstate, as well as their condition and usage. In 2016, we again completed a similar data collection effort to validate the data we collected several years earlier. In 2018, we released version 1 of this implementation plan, which proposed closing 11 full-service rest areas and all 16 parking-only sites within the state. The response to this initial plan wasn't great, and we listened. The public comments received after that initial release convinced us that we needed to take a closer look, particularly at the lack of truck parking, which was identified as an issue in the majority of the comments we received. In 2019, in addition to extending the public comment period for 9 to 10 months, we also initiated a truck parking study in response to the comments we received. In the first study, we always intended to use the funds we saved with the closures to more fully invest in other, more used rest areas, but we never really identified the locations of those additional truck parking spaces or when we anticipated needing to add them. This was the thrust of the truck parking study, to identify where and when we expected these truck parking spaces to be needed, as well as when we expected the need to upgrade the facilities at these sites. In December of 2019, we revised this implementation plan, incorporating the results of the truck parking study, and reviewed this with Iowa Department of Transportation Management. And in May 2020, we also reviewed this information with the Iowa Transportation Commission. This release and this public information meeting is intended for public consumption and comment regarding the changes we've made to this plan. So what's different with the release of the plan? In the initial plan, we recommended closing 11 full-service sites. In this release, we've cut that number to 8, keeping 2 additional rest areas along I-35 south of Des Moines and 1 rest area located in Davenport on eastbound I-80. There are quite a few rest area sites along the system that are approaching 50 years of age, and with this plan, we've also identified when we expect to upgrade those aging buildings and parking areas. About half the full-service rest areas on the interstate in Iowa are approaching 50 years of age. With this plan, we expect to close 8 of those aging sites and upgrading the remaining 12 between 2022 and 2033. We would also close 10 of the parking-only sites and upgrade the truck parking with more spaces and vault toilets on the remaining 6 sites. All the parking-only sites that would be closed are fairly small, with less than 10 parking spaces each. Upgrades to those remaining 6 sites would add between 40 and 50 parking spaces at each location. Many of the truck parking mitigation recommendations didn't change between the first and second releases of this implementation plan. We still intend to better identify available parking throughout the system using cameras and our new Truck Parking Information Management System, TPIMS. We also still think there is value in investigating partnerships with public and private agencies where it makes sense and where we can do so legally. We're also expecting to continue to work on the design of our rest areas to squeeze out just as much space and useful life as we can, as well as time and locate the upgrades in a coordinated fashion with other truck stops and convenience stores that may decide to locate near the interstates. That said, with this plan, the biggest change is that we have identified where we expect to add truck parking and when we expect to upgrade the building and parking areas at these sites. With this plan, we would add a net 247 truck parking spaces throughout the state. That's roughly a 30% increase from what is out there today. That includes 17 additional spaces along I-29, 19 along I-35, 222 along I-80, and 14 along I-380. The only net decrease in truck parking along any interstate corridor is along I-880 north of Council Bluffs, where we would be removing 2 full-service rest areas. As part of the truck parking study, we reached out to our trucking industry partners to identify the areas they perceive to be the most difficult to find truck parking. This figure, which is also in the report, identifies the areas they indicated it was difficult to find parking along the interstate system. We combined this survey information with actual parking counts throughout the system to rank areas along the interstate where it is the most difficult for trucks to find parking. Not surprising to most, I-80 was the most critical, but I-35 and I-29 were also identified as needing more convenient truck parking. This slide just gives an illustration of a concept of how we'd hope to upgrade some of the parking-only sites to better use the space we already own. It illustrates how we expect to add the net 247 spaces without needing to purchase additional right-of-way. We also have identified ways to better design these sites to accommodate oversized trucks carrying things like wind blades, and also accommodate inspection needs of our motor vehicle partners at critical locations. This map, which is in the final report, further illustrates the areas and sites that we expect to lose truck parking through closures in red, and areas where we would expect to add spaces at remaining rest areas in green. As you can see in western Iowa along I-29, we are proposing closure of the full-service rest areas located at Sergeant Bluff and Missouri Valley, as well as the full-service rest areas located near Loveland along I-880 just north of Council Bluffs. Due to their close proximity to other rest areas south, we are also proposing closure of the I-35 rest areas at Story City when the buildings reach the end of their useful life. We are not proposing the closure of any full-service rest area along Interstate 80 or I-380. Please take a moment to review these recommendations within the final report. Again, we anticipate adding a net 17 truck parking spaces along I-29, 19 along I-35, 222 along I-80, 14 along I-380, and the only loss of spaces would be 25 spaces along I-880 north of Council Bluffs. While we do expect the closures to save money, as you can see with this slide, those savings will be combined with more funding to upgrade the remaining system. In total, the state would save approximately $38.2 million in 30 years. Those savings, in addition to another $56.2 million over those same 30 years, will upgrade all remaining aging sites and parking areas and add a net 247 truck spaces to the system. In total, we expect to spend approximately $94.5 million throughout the rest area system over the next 30 years. That equals about $7.2 million over 15 program years to completely upgrade the system. It's important to note that with these changes, every rest area within the system will be approximately 75 miles or less to the next rest area. This equates to approximately 1 hour or less between rest areas. This map illustrates Iowa's future rest area system with 30 full-service rest areas and 6 parking-only sites, as well as 247 additional truck parking spaces located throughout the system. Thank you for your time in reviewing this implementation plan. and we would sincerely appreciate any feedback you would be willing to provide. Our expectation is that this is a living plan, and as things change, so will the plan. That said, we've tried our best to understand what we've heard and seen and establish the first cut to help better the system, and in doing so, get you there more safely, conveniently, and efficiently. Thank you.